The Sacramento Kings dropped their 5th straight game tonight in Detroit, but this loss may have given the Kings a roadmap to their future success. Let's get it.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. I am James Hammer, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. I'm also the new host of Locked On Kings. Thanks for joining me here. I've been a credentialed media member for the last 16 years, covering this team for every possible person under the sun, be it the ESPN True Hoop Network, NBA.com, NBC Sports Bay Area, Kings Beat, ESPN 1320, now Locked On. You can find me everywhere. You can find me on Twitter at James_Ham NBA. Give my 6 quick thoughts after every single Sacramento Kings game. This episode of Locked On Kings is brought to you by FanDuel. Before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during the happy hour. Every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Look, the Sacramento Kings continue to lose. This is the 4th 5-game losing streak so far of the season, and we're only 47 games in. So lots of losing. Not a great showing tonight in Detroit. A 139-116 loss, 23-point blowout. Things aren't looking good, but hey, let's be honest. There's always a lot to take away from every single Sacramento Kings game. A couple of things I want to point to. Number one, Nique Clifford started at the shooting guard spot tonight. He played really, really well in place of Zach LaVine, who is out with lower back issues. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to these veteran point guards that should be figuring out a way to help this team, but continue to turn the ball over at an alarming rate. And then lastly, or first, we're going to get to this idea of a roadmap. Like, look, Sacramento Kings are on a gigantic road trip. It's going to take them all over the country over the next week and a half leading up to the All-Star break. And during that time, you're going to see teams that have been in a position that you have been in. And this Detroit Pistons team, for me, is probably one of the better examples of a team that figured out how to, number one, be bad enough to get a great player. Cade Cunningham, it's taken a little bit of time, but he's developed into a top-tier NBA player. He's an all-star level player. He's leading this team to the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. But it's not as easy as just saying, hey, go get yourself a Cade Cunningham. Because if that's the case, then every team would do it. That's why I think it's extremely important that the Sacramento Kings continue sort of their losing ways. At 12-35, like, this is not a good position to be in for the Kings. Unless you're looking at the lottery. And this year's lottery, the top 3 teams have the 3 worst teams in the NBA have a 14% chance of landing the number 1 seed overall. Team number 4 has a 12.5%. Team number 5 has a 10.5%. And the team number 6 has a 9% chance of moving into the top 4 of the NBA draft. That's where you want to be. This is a very good draft, and Sacramento Kings realistically need to find their Cade Cunningham. And so I think it's really important to look at this Detroit Pistons team because, look, first of all, it's a spot that Scott Perry he cut his teeth in the NBA. He worked for the Pistons in the early 2000s. He helped Joe Dumars, orchestrate this incredible build that included a bunch of Eastern Conference championship runs and just built this really nice, solid winner in Detroit. And so he has a ton of ties there. So don't think that Scott Perry isn't looking at the build that they've done here in Detroit and said, hey, that would be really nice if we could sort of build our system the same way that they have. But on top of going out and getting the number 1 pick overall and drafting Cade Cunningham, I think this Detroit Pistons team also gives a couple other roadmaps. They've done a really, really nice job of mixing veteran talent like Tobias Harris. You can go back through their history of the last couple of years. They've had a lot of other players. Dennis Schröder was there last season and really found a niche with their offense. He's a player that they would have liked to have brought back for another season, but couldn't work out the money. This year, they brought in Duncan Robinson, who's coming from the Heat franchise and, the Heat culture. So he's there to give you a boost. And so if you go back through their time here the last couple of years, as they're trying to build up this star in Cade Cunningham, they've done a really good job of saying, hey, look, we're not going to put all the pressure on you just to be great right away. We're going to bring in a Tim Hardaway Jr. and see if he can help you. We're going to bring in a Bojan Bogdanovic and see if he can help you get to the next level. But also, we're going to make active moves. And while we're bringing along a guy like Cade Cunningham, we're going to also figure out ways to find guys in the draft like Jalen Duren, who's become an absolute beast for the Pistons. He's averaging like 18 and 11 on the season, and he's really developed. They have a young superstar in the making in Asura Thompson. Again, he might not ever reach the heights that his brother Amen Thompson will reach, but he's still a very good NBA player. Before Cade Cunningham got there, they had a nice draft pick in Isaiah Stewart, who again picked up a couple of technicals in this game tonight. But you can see the basis of how they built their team. And I'd also point out, they drafted Jaden Ivey, the pick after Keegan Murray in the draft a couple of years ago. And Jaden Ivey, he's coming off a massive major injury last season. He may not reach the heights that anyone, hoped that he would when he was coming out of Purdue. But at the same time, you can understand that, like, look, that's what the draft is. The draft is a true crapshoot. You really never know what you're going to get. So I think it's important to look at the way that the Kings are going to try to disassemble their roster currently. We're going to see a lot of attempted player movement between now and February 5th. We have no true idea whether it's going to work out for the Kings or not, whether they're going to be able to make a trade that makes them a better team this year or next year, or gets off of salary money, or maybe even just helps them, bring in some extra draft capital. We're not sure if that's going to happen, but moving forward, the process here for the Sacramento Kings should look very similar to what we're seeing from the Detroit Pistons. And, again, hopefully it works out the right way. Hopefully they're able to find the right player to build around. And I don't know who that might be, if it's Darren Peterson or AJ DeBonsa, or if it's going to be Cam Boozer. But what you do need to do, you need to start looking at the future and start trying to emulate teams. And again, it's kind of a copycat league. I don't think that there are a lot of teams out there that have found success just going all young and figuring out from there. And I also don't think that, here we are this deep into the season. I don't think playing veterans major minutes every single night is a good thing for the Kings either. This has got to be about losing. It's got to be about, I don't want to say tanking every single game. It's got to be about improving while understanding what's in front of you. And for the Kings, what's in front of them is a potential top tier draft pick, and hopefully some other way that they can improve, when that in Sacramento it's extremely difficult to do free agency. Free agents don't typically flock to Sacramento. And then, what you have for trade chips, there isn't a lot of high value players that teams are looking to get from the Sacramento Kings. So trades are going to be difficult. Signing free agents is going to be difficult, especially when you don't have any cap space. So the Kings are going to have to figure this out through the draft, and that's why Scott Perry's here. All right, we're going to step aside. When we come back, I'm going to dive into Nique Clifford. Nique Clifford had a really, really nice game starting for the injured Zach LaVine, and I'm kind of excited to figure out where he's heading on this tour, this adventure that is a rookie season for the 24th pick in the draft. Fridays already feel different during this basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame. It's a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Friday from 6 to 7:30 Eastern have become appointment viewing for NBA Happy Hour. Open the FanDuel app during happy hour, and it always brings something new: boosts, bonuses, and surprises. It's easy to check with the weekly specials before tip-off and make a move before the window closes. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 Eastern Time. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, I'm back. Let's get into this Keon Ellis versus Nique Clifford conversation because I think a lot of fans are going to take it that direction. Nique Clifford got a start tonight. Keon Ellis actually played after drawing 3 straight DMP CDs, and I think if we're going to look at any conversation with Nique, we do have to analyze it within the backdrop of what does this mean for Keon Ellis. And so for me, when you have a starting shooting guard like Zach LaVine, who, let's be honest, is an incredible athlete. He's a two-time All-Star. He's a guy that can get you 30 or even 40 on any given night. But this hasn't been his best season. He struggled with sort of his role and what it means for him to be a part of the Sacramento Kings. You can probably put him in the situation that Scott Perry asks all the time: are you a volunteer? Are you a hostage? I do think that at this point, Zach LaVine is a hostage. Uh, Somewhere along the way, he came up with some sort of back injury, and he was a late scratch. He was put on the injury report this morning. And so Nique Clifford started in his place. And again, Doug Christie has his choice. He can go with a guy like Keon Ellis, who again hadn't played in 5 games. He missed 2 games with a knee injury, 3 as a DMP, or he could go with a rookie like Nique Clifford. And I think when Doug decided to go with Nique Clifford, it was with the understanding that he was also putting Domantas Sabonis back in the starting lineup at the center position for Max Reynaud. And so they made some changes here. I thought that we saw Nique Clifford play one of his best offensive games. And for me, I know, Doug Christie always wants to focus on the defensive side of the ball. And I will tell you that I think that Nique Clifford projects as an extremely, extremely high end defender at the NBA level. He's long, he's athletic, but he's actually really strong. And what we've seen from him is he's not getting pushed off the ball. He's not getting, blown by at the NBA level. And I think he's done a really nice job both at the 2 and the 3. He projects as maybe a 1, 2, 3 at the NBA level, although we're a little ways away from that. But on the offensive end, where I see his development is really when he gets the ball in his hands and either takes a quick 3-point shot. Tonight he goes 2 for 4, really nice performance as far as shooting the 3, but also the times where he puts the ball on the floor. He's a highly competent player. He's got all kinds of skills that we have not got to see here at the NBA level yet, just because the makeup of the Sacramento Kings this season. He's stuck on the bench behind a DeMar DeRozan. When he is in the game, it's usually with, a guy like Zach LaVine or DeMar or a guy like Russell Westbrook or a couple other heavy usage players like Malik Monk or Dennis Schröder. So there's this weirdness to what's happening when he's on the court that he basically is a stand in the corner 3-point shooter. And I think the biggest thing for me is that this isn't a Keegan Murray type situation. Keegan Murray in his first NBA season stood in the corner and hit the most 3-pointers ever by an NBA rookie. It was great to see that was kind of who he was, but Nique Clifford comes into the league with more of a bag. He's got a lot more to offer than just that as a 3-point shooter early in his career. And in fact, he's not a great 3-point shooter. It's something he'll work on this summer. So I think to see him get the ball in his hands, to see him be more active, more energetic, and take off with the ball. He's an excellent passer. He fires the ball all over the court. He's got great court vision. So there's a lot to like about what he's doing right now. He finished this game with 15 points. I think that's a really good number for him if he's going to fill in as a spot starter. He had 3 rebounds, which, to be honest, I don't think that's great. He's a much better rebounder than that. He averaged 9 rebounds a game in his 5th college season. But you're hoping that we're starting to see maybe the maturation and also maybe an opportunity. Now, I'm going to get to why the Keon Ellis situation kind of matters when we talk about this, the Nique Clifford development. Like, look, I said this on the radio. I've said it in a couple other spots, but there's a very, very high likelihood that Keon Ellis is traded between now and February 5th. There are a lot of teams they're interested in Keon Ellis, according to our friend Sam Amick at The Athletic. There are 10 teams who have called on Keon Ellis and would like to bring him in. Got to remember that he's on a $2 million contract, and it's a league minimum contract, so the Kings can send him out without even taking anything back for him. I expect the Kings to probably get a late first-round pick out of Keon Ellis. And I know a lot of Kings fans aren't happy that Keon won't be part of the team moving forward. But that ship kind of sailed this summer when the Kings picked up his team option and had him play for 2.3 million or whatever it is this season, as opposed to 10 or 12 million dollars. But look, Nique Clifford is under contract for another 3 years after this season. The Kings have it's a guaranteed 2 years with team options after year 2, for year 3 and for year 4. And I think that they're going to slowly transition to him being a more viable NBA player that for their build than Keon Ellis. And part of it is contractual. Part of it is the fact that, like, look, I think they have a player who wouldn't mind moving on at this point, that would like to have made a lot more money this season than he does. And at the end of the day, it's going to be really tough to retain him. Kings can't negotiate a contract with Keon Ellis until February 9th. At that point, it's a big deal for the Kings to kind of figure out where they're going with this direction. And Keon is a little bit older as a prospect at this point. He's in his 4th NBA season. But also, if you can't work your way into a rotation and stick in the rotation long term, and you're making $2 million, that's one thing. If you're making 10, 12, 14 million a year and you can't stick in a rotation, and again, I'm not blaming Keon that a guy like Zach LaVine and, you have all of these other players that are in front of him, but as a franchise, you have to choose a path. And I think right away, the Kings would like to move some of these guys in front of Keon, and maybe that would have made this season different, but they haven't been able to. And so that's kind of where we're at. It's a tough spot to be in, but I expect Nique Clifford to play more and more and more as the season goes on. I expect him to probably get a ton of starts as we get down, to the end to the last 25 games, 30 games after the NBA All-Star break. And that's kind of when you hand the team off to young players. And so I fully expect that to be the case. We're going to step aside. When we come back, I'm going to dive into this point guard situation because the Kings keep going into games with veteran point guards. And for whatever reason, those veteran point guards figure out new and exciting ways to not help them win games. So we'll be right back. During basketball season, there's nothing like being in the building, the energy, the crowd, that first big run that gets everyone on their feet. Fans want to be there for those moments, not stuck refreshing screens or guessing what tickets are really going to cost. That's where Gametime comes in. The Gametime app gives fans the advantage back, making it incredibly easy to score amazing tickets, fast, simple, and without the guesswork. Browsing the Gametime app is straightforward and intuitive. Finding tickets just takes a few taps. Seeing the new view from your seat before you choose seats and buy tickets makes it easy. Prices, including fees, are up front, so the total is clear from the start. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code Locked On NBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On NBA for $20 off. All right. This is 2 shows in a row that I feel like I'm going to unload on Russell Westbrook and the Sacramento Kings aging veteran point guard situation. And like, look, I don't think that that's supposed to be the point. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Russell Westbrook and what he's accomplished in his NBA career. I do think that he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He all-time leading scoring point guard. He's a top 7 in assists or whatever it is. He has over 2,000 steals. He's got more triple doubles than any player in the history of the game. Like, look, Russell Westbrook's an incredible player. At 37, though, you would expect him to be a little more, I don't know, a little more safe with the basketball. And that's not the case. We can point to the game, this weekend on Friday where the Kings lost, but Russell Westbrook, he only turned the ball over. He didn't turn the ball over at all. But in between that game and, like the game before that, I think he had 4 turnovers. Tonight's game, he had 4 turnovers in 22 minutes. When you pair that with Dennis Schröder coming off the bench, and Dennis Schröder going for 7 turnovers in 25 minutes, you had 11 turnovers between your 2 veteran point guards, and your 2 veteran point guards have almost 30 years of NBA experience. So for me, like, look, if this team is going to progress, these guys have to be game managers. They can't go out there and try to be, in football terms, they can't go out and be a Patrick Mahomes or a Josh Allen. These guys need to be more like the Trent Dilfers of the world or the Sam Darnolds of the world. Guys who go out and just make the right play and help young players get better. And so far, that's not what we've seen. And to me, again, when you're going to go into a game and your 2 veteran point guards combined for 11 of your 19 turnovers, and you give up 28 points off those turnovers, the game's over. Like, you don't have a legitimate chance to keep up in that game, and that's why the Kings lost by 23 points tonight. You just had way too many turnovers early in the game. It took you out of everything. And also, they're live ball turnovers. Almost every single time I see these two turn the ball over, it's an egregious turnover. I don't know what the solution is because let's be honest, the Sacramento Kings don't really have another point guard option. They do have Malik Monk, who's more of a combo guard and a guy who I love running the offense off the bench, but it doesn't help you when you don't have a future point guard. So I think it's probably the biggest thing that the Sacramento Kings are facing. They have to find a point guard of the future in order for this thing to work. And I don't know if that's making a wild move and trying to pick up a guy like John Morant in at trade season. That's going to be an option. Or it might be an option. He, of course, is hurt, but he's 26 years old and kind of fits the age arc of a lot of the players the Kings are going to move forward with. I don't know if they again talk to Cleveland and try to see if Darius Garland becomes available this offseason, or between now and February 5th. Like, so there's an opportunity here. But I also like at some point I think the Kings have to try something different. And that could be like seeing if Nique Clifford can run the point guard position for 5 to 10 minutes a game, maybe 5 minutes in the first half and 10 minutes and 5 minutes in the second half and see how that works. Also, let him play off the ball, let him play some shooting guard, some small forward. So that's one opportunity. You could also go back to a guy like Devin Carter, who actually played tonight after not playing for what seems like months. Devin Carter's been a healthy scratch for almost the entire season. But either way, when you're assessing this team and you're looking to see what's next for the Sacramento Kings, one of the biggest things you have to do is you got to pinpoint a position of need and you have to attack it. And I think the Kings did a safe move this offseason going out and getting Dennis Schröder with a mid-level exception. I think Dennis Schröder still has value around the league, and there's a way to move off of Dennis Schröder's contract if that's what they choose to do. But I'm looking at this team who, is running young centers out there in Dylan Cardwell and Maxime Reynaud for a certain amount of minutes every night, trying to build them up, trying to get them more acclimated to the league. They're giving Nique Clifford opportunities. They're giving Precious Achiuwa opportunities. And one of the problems the Kings have is they don't have a point guard who's under 27. And again, that's not to take away from from Devin Carter. He's just not an NBA point guard. He's more of a combo guard, a little bit more like a guy like Malik Monk. And so for right now, there isn't another option. And that's where, for me, I think if I'm Doug Christie, I start having some really difficult discussions about like, look, you got to be part of the reason why we're winning games, and you've got to take a step back as a scorer. You got to take a step back as like a true, like whatever it is that you want to do for yourself, and you've got to set your teammates up. You've got to be more judicious with the ball, and turning the ball over again like 7 times in a game or 4 times in a game when you're playing limited minutes. If you're playing 22 minutes and you're pacing for 6 or 7 turnovers in a game, that's just not going to be a way that this team can move forward. So hopefully, they're able to find either someone out there in trade season, or it's a position that they attack during the offseason, because I think one of the natural, ways for this group to move forward is to find that guy. And, again, you look at the playoff teams around the league, most of them have a top 15 point guard. And at this point, the Kings don't. The combination of 2 point guards might equal a top 15 point guard, but not when they're playing loose and sort of out of control. So, difficult game to watch today. And, that's going to be the case for a lot of games this season with the Sacramento Kings. This has definitely become a season about draft picks and about trying to clear out some of your heavyweight contracts, and it could get really painful between now and February 5th. But I also look, I think Scott Perry understands that his team has a weakness here at the point guard spot. And that's why, again, they brought in Russell Westbrook and at the end of training camp, just because they didn't think they had enough playmaking at that spot moving forward. So I expect them to continue to work on this, to continue to try different things, especially if it's, some of the young guys on this team. But also it's with the understanding that none of this is going to be easy. It's not going to be easy to sit down with an 18-year veteran in Russell Westbrook and say, hey, look, man, you're not going to play for a couple of games, or we're going to get you back to 18 minutes a night. That's not going to be an easy conversation. Just like it's not an easy conversation with a guy like DeMar DeRozan at the small forward spot, or any of the, Domantas Sabonis at the center position. Like, if you're trying to bring along young players and develop, you've got to have the minutes to do it. And for right now, I don't think the Kings do have sort of the space to do what they have to do. And I also don't think that they have a player that really fits the mold of what they're trying to do at that point guard spot. So it's tough. Maybe they're able to acquire someone, even if it's a young point guard that you get to give a shot to in the second half of the season. But as of right now, the Kings are kind of locked in with these guys, and they've got to figure out a way to be better. And that's, I'm going to keep harping on it. Probably not every show, but certainly when you see 11 turnovers in a combined 47 minutes of play between your two veteran point guards. That's not conducive to winning, and it's not conducive to building the right type of culture with your team. All right. We're just about done here with this show. Thanks for tuning in. If you ever miss an episode, it's time to make it official. Join the Locked On Everyday Club and get ad-free audio, access to our members only Discord, and more. All built for our most loyal fans. Go to lockedonkings.supercast.com or go to everyday dayer club and sign up. It's affordable, and you get some really nice benefits to this, and it's very cool. So that's going to do it for this edition of the Locked On podcast. I'm James Ham. I'll be back tomorrow when we do this all over again.